What if your inability to focus isn't a flaw, but a calculation? It is not an addiction. It is not laziness. And it is certainly not a lack of willpower. It is a prediction made by your nervous system that deep work is simply too expensive to afford. Think about the last time you sat down to do something meaningful. You opened the document. You knew exactly what you needed to do. You knew the stakes. And yet within 40 seconds you felt a physical itch, a tightness in your chest, a sudden, overwhelming urge to be anywhere but here. And before you even made a conscious choice, your hand moved. You unlocked your phone. You opened a new tab. You escaped. And then comes the shame. You tell yourself you are broken. You tell yourself you are disciplined in every other area of your life. But here, in the quiet moments that matter most, you are weak. I want you to stop telling yourself that lie. Your brain is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to function for the last 2 million years. You are running an ancient operating system in a modern environment, and that system has triggered a metabolic veto. Before we begin, I need to make a crucial distinction. This is not about diagnosing you. I am not making medical claims, and I am not a doctor. This is about describing the patterns that researchers are observing in human behavior, motivation, and attention regulation. We are looking at the mechanics of why you stop. We are going to look at the biology of resistance. In the next hour, we are not going to discuss generic productivity hacks. We are not going to talk about color coding your calendar or writing a better to-do list. Those are surface-level fixes for a root-level problem. Instead, we are going to dismantle the biological cost of control. We will examine why your brain predicts that distraction is safer than work. We will look at the new science of avoidance learning and how you have accidentally trained your dopamine circuits to fear effort. And finally, I will give you the neurosomatic tools to correct that prediction error. We are going to move from the biology of your cells, to the architecture of your room, to the identity in your mind. You have spent years fighting your own physiology. It is time to stop fighting and start engineering. Let's begin with the energy source itself. Chapter 1. The Metabolic Veto. The Science of Cognitive Cost. Your brain does not care about your career goals. It does not care about your deadline, your promotion, or your legacy. Your brain cares about one thing: calories. You have been led to believe that your brain is a supercomputer designed for complex thought. That is only partially true. Biologically, your brain is an efficiency engine. It is a survival machine that is ruthless about energy conservation. I want you to visualize a specific moment. You are sitting at your desk. You have a major project due. You know exactly what needs to be done. You have the skills to do it. You have the time to do it. You open the document. The cursor blinks. And then, you feel it. It is a subtle, physical repulsion. It feels like a magnetic field pushing you away from the screen. Your chest tightens slightly. Your legs get restless. You suddenly remember you need a glass of water. Or you need to check your email. Or you need to clean your desk. You assume this feeling is a character flaw. You tell yourself, I am just being lazy. I just need more discipline. That is a lie. What you are feeling is a biological event. It acts like a protective reflex triggered by your nervous system. We can think of this as a metabolic veto. Every time you look at a difficult task, whether it is a blank page, a complex spreadsheet, or a strategic plan, your brain runs a split-second cost-benefit analysis. It asks a simple question: is the caloric investment of this task worth the immediate return? If the answer is no, it essentially pulls a cognitive emergency brake. To understand why this happens and how to override it, we have to look at the work of behavioral economists like Daniel Kahneman and biologists like Robert Sapolsky. They describe the brain as a cognitive miser. Your brain represents only about 2% of your body weight. However, it consumes roughly 20% of your metabolic energy. That is an incredibly expensive organ to keep running. In evolutionary terms, thinking is expensive. For most of human history, calories were scarce. If you burned too much energy thinking about a complex problem that did not result in immediate food or safety, you were putting your survival at risk. So, the brain developed a dual processing system to manage this energy budget. Kahneman famously categorized this as System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, automatic, and cheap. It is the mode you use when you drive a car on a familiar road, when you brush your teeth, or when you scroll through social media. It requires almost no glucose to maintain. System 2 is slow, logical, and metabolically expensive. This is the mode required for deep work, writing, coding, strategizing, learning a new skill. Here is the problem. Your brain acts as a hoarder. It wants to keep you in System 1 as much as possible to preserve its fuel reserves. When you try to switch from low-energy scrolling to high-energy strategizing, your brain registers a spike in energy demand. It views this demand as a caloric threat. It is similar to how a bank might freeze your credit card if it sees a massive, unexpected transaction. So, the brain triggers a veto. It floods your body with a subtle sensation of agitation. It increases norepinephrine just enough to make you feel restless. It urges you to switch back to a low-energy task. You interpret this agitation as boredom, but it is actually a safety mechanism. Your brain is trying to stop you from burning fuel on a task with an uncertain reward. This mechanism is what makes starting so difficult. But there is a second mechanism that makes sustaining focus even harder. This brings us to the most dangerous myth in the modern workplace: the myth of multitasking. You might believe that you can quickly check an email and then jump right back into deep focus. You think you are shifting gears smoothly. You think you are being productive. The science suggests otherwise. Dr. Gloria Mark from the University of California, Irvine, has studied this extensively in corporate environments. Her research uncovered a statistic that should terrify anyone who wants to be a high performer. When you are interrupted, or when you interrupt yourself to check a notification, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return your full attention to the original task. Read that again. 23 minutes and 15 seconds. Why does it take so long? It is not because you are slow. It is because of a phenomenon called attention residue. Imagine your brain as a whiteboard. When you are working on a complex problem, you fill that whiteboard with data, variables, and connections. You are building a mental schema. When you quickly check your phone to answer a text message, your brain has to wipe that whiteboard clean to process the new information. Even if the text only takes 30 seconds to read, the whiteboard has been erased. When you return to your work, you cannot just pick up where you left off. You have to redraw the entire schema on the whiteboard. You have to remember where you were, what the variables were, and what you were trying to solve. This reconstruction process is metabolically exhausting. If you check your phone just 3 times in an hour, you are forcing your brain to wipe and redraw that whiteboard 3 times. Mathematically, if each reset costs you 23 minutes of recovery, you have effectively done 0 minutes of deep work in that hour. You are not multitasking. You are context switching. This explains the phenomenon of the exhausted office worker who produces nothing. You might spend 8 hours at your desk, answering emails, checking Slack, and reacting to notifications. By 5 p.m., you feel completely drained. You feel like you ran a marathon. But when you look at your output, you realize you made no significant progress on your major goals. You feel this way because you burned all your energy on the switch, not on the work. You spent your entire caloric budget on the friction of changing gears. So we have the metabolic cost of starting, and the metabolic cost of switching. But there is one final layer to this problem. It is the psychological trigger that activates the veto in the first place. The safety bias. Your brain does not just measure energy, it measures risk. In a primitive environment, ambiguity is dangerous. If you hear a rustle in the bushes and you do not know what it is, the safest option is to run. The brain hates uncertainty. Modern work is almost entirely defined by ambiguity. Consider the difference between 2 potential actions you can take right now. Action A is write the quarterly report. Action B is check Instagram. Action A is ambiguous. How long will it take? Is your writing good enough? Will your boss like it? What if you get stuck? Your brain looks at this task and sees a fog of uncertainty. The amygdala, your threat detection center, lights up. It labels this task as unsafe. Action B, checking Instagram, is certain. You know exactly what will happen. You will see an image. You will scroll. You will get a hit of light and sound. The outcome is perfectly predictable. Your brain prefers the phone not because it is fun. It prefers the phone because it is safe. When you feel that urge to tab away from your work, you are not seeking pleasure. You are seeking safety. You are retreating from the high-stakes, ambiguous threat of the work, back to the safe, predictable cave of distraction. This is the metabolic veto in action. It is a three-part defense system. First, the cognitive miser conserves energy by resisting the shift to System 2 thinking. Second, the switch cost penalizes you for every interruption, draining your battery. Third, the safety bias steers you away from ambiguity and towards the predictable comfort of low-value tasks. If you do not understand this mechanism, you will spend your life fighting it with willpower. You will try to white-knuckle your way through the day, and you will fail, because fighting your own biology is a losing battle in the long run. But once you understand that this is a calculation, you can change the variables. You can lower the perceived cost. You can increase the perceived safety. You can manipulate the equation. However, before we can fix the equation, we have to look at the other side of the ledger. We have talked about the cost. Now we must talk about the reward. There is a chemical reason why the distraction feels so compelling and why the work feels so flat, and it has nothing to do with how much you enjoy your job. Chapter 2. Dopaminergic errors. It's not pleasure, it's avoidance. You are not addicted to your phone. I know it feels like an addiction. I know you reach for it like a smoker reaches for a cigarette. I know that sometimes you find yourself unlocking the screen without even realizing your hand has moved. But if we look at neurochemistry, something far more subtle and far more dangerous is happening. You are not seeking pleasure, you are medicating discomfort. We need to completely reframe your relationship with distraction. You probably believe you get distracted because the internet is fun and work is boring. You think you are chasing a dopamine high. You think you are a glutton for pleasure. That is incorrect. You are trapped in a biological loop called avoidance learning. When you are working, you feel a distinct sensation of strain. We discussed this in the last chapter. It is the metabolic cost of focus. Your brain registers this strain as a form of pain. When you switch to your phone, that pain disappears instantly. Your brain does not care about the content on the screen. It cares about the relief. The moment you unlock your device, your anxiety drops. Your cortisol lowers. You feel a momentary wash of calm. Your brain records this sequence. It writes a line of code that says, when you feel the strain of work, switch to the screen to survive. You are not conditioning yourself to be happy. You are conditioning yourself to quit. To break this loop, we have to look under the hood of your motivation system. We have to talk about dopamine, but we have to move past the pop psychology myths you have heard on social media. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure molecule. They think it is the reward you get when you eat chocolate or have sex, or get a like on Instagram. That is not what dopamine is. Dopamine is not about satisfaction. It is about anticipation. It is the chemical of wanting, not liking. Its primary function is to drive you toward things that promote survival. Food, reproduction, information. And it does this through a mechanism called reward prediction error. This is a concept deeply studied in computational neuroscience, specifically in the labs of researchers like Wolfram Schultz. Your brain is a prediction machine. It is constantly predicting how much reward an action will yield. If you take an action, and the result is exactly what you expected, your dopamine levels stay flat. However, if you take an action and the result is better than expected or different than expected, you get a massive spike in dopamine. This spike is a teaching signal. It tells your brain, pay attention to this. Do this again. This is valuable. In the natural world, these spikes were rare. You might get one if you found a hidden fruit tree you did not know existed, or if you successfully hunted an animal after days of failure. But in the digital world, you are bombarded with super stimuli that hijack this system. Think about a slot machine. When you pull the lever, you do not know if you will win or lose. You do not know if you will get a cherry or a jackpot. The uncertainty is the key, because the reward is unpredictable. Your brain cannot build a stable model. It cannot predict the outcome. So every time you pull the lever, Your brain assumes the potential reward is infinite. It releases a massive spike of dopamine just to get you to check. Now look at your phone. Your phone is the most sophisticated slot machine ever engineered. When you see a red notification badge, or when you feel a vibration in your pocket, or when you see the pull to refresh icon, you are pulling the lever. You simply do not know what is behind the red dot. And because you do not know, your dopamine system fires at maximum capacity. It creates a state of hyperarousal. It demands that you resolve the uncertainty. This creates a massive reward prediction error. Now I want you to compare that biological storm to your work. Let's say you have to write a report, or study for an exam, or build a spreadsheet. You know exactly what the work entails. You know it will be hard. You know it will be tedious. And you know the reward, finishing it, is hours, or days, or even weeks away. There is no surprise. There is no unpredictability. Therefore, there is no dopamine spike. Compared to the towering spikes of your digital life, the dopamine signal for your work is a flat line. It is not that you lack discipline, it is that your work cannot compete with a slot machine that you carry in your pocket. The signal-to-noise ratio is completely broken. This hijacking of the prediction error system explains why you pick up the phone, but it does not explain why you keep picking it up, even when you know you should be working. This leads us to the second and much darker mechanism: avoidance learning. This is where science shifts from desire to fear. Recent behavioral research, including studies on negative reinforcement, suggests that dopamine does not just reinforce what gives us pleasure, it reinforces what relieves us from pain. Let's trace the neural pathway of a typical distraction cycle. Step 1. You sit down to do a hard task. Maybe it is a difficult email to a client. Step 2. The amygdala detects ambiguity. It worries you might say the wrong thing. It worries the client might be angry. It worries you are not good enough. Step 3. You feel a spike of adrenaline. This is the stress response. You feel a tightness in your chest. A subtle feeling of, I don't want to be here. Step 4. You impulsively switch tabs to YouTube or open Twitter. Step 5. The stress response vanishes. Here is the critical part. The moment that stress vanishes, your brain releases dopamine. It is rewarding you for escaping. This is avoidance learning. You are not distracted because you love social media. You are distracted because you have trained your brain to view deep work as a threat and distraction as the safety hatch. Every time you tab switch, you are myelinating that circuit. You are becoming an expert at running away. If you do this 10 times a day for 5 years, you have reinforced the quit circuit nearly 20,000 times. You have built a superhighway in your brain that bypasses effort. And this leads us to the final and perhaps most painful consequence of this cycle: receptor downregulation. You have likely heard the term dopamine detox. It is a catchy phrase used by influencers, but it is scientifically inaccurate. You cannot detox from dopamine. If you had zero dopamine, you would be dead. But the underlying principle, the idea that your brain has changed, is real. It is about sensitivity. Your brain seeks homeostasis. It wants a balanced state. I want you to imagine your brain as a sound engineer at a concert. If the music is at a moderate volume, the engineer leaves the faders alone. But if you blast the music at maximum volume, screaming guitars, thumping bass, he turns down the fader. When you bombard your brain with high-speed, high-reward digital content, you are blasting the music at maximum volume. You are flooding the synapse with dopamine. To protect itself, your brain may downregulate your dopamine receptors. It turns down the volume fader. This creates a new baseline. Now, imagine what happens when you step away from the phone. You try to read a book. You try to listen to a conversation. You try to look at a sunset, or you try to do deep work. These are low-stimulation activities. They are quiet music. But because your brain has turned down the volume fader to handle the noise of the internet, you cannot hear the music of real life anymore. Dr. Anna Lemke calls this the dopamine deficit state. You are biologically in the red. Normal tasks now feel painful. This state is often referred to as anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure from normal activities. You are not bored because the world is boring. You are bored because you have blunted your own sensitivity. You have worn out the machinery that allows you to engage with reality. So, this is the diagnosis. First, the metabolic veto makes starting expensive. Second, reward prediction error makes the work feel invisible compared to the phone. Third, avoidance learning trains you to run away from difficulty. And finally, receptor downregulation makes the quiet work feel physically painful. It is a perfect storm. And I want to be clear. It is not your fault that you are in it. But, now that you know the schematic, you can dismantle the trap. We have diagnosed the energy cost. We have diagnosed the chemical loop. Now we must intervene. We are going to bypass the brain entirely. We are going to start with the only part of the brain that sits outside the skull. We are going to start with your eyes. Chapter 3. Visual Anchoring. Using eye behavior to stabilize attention. You cannot control your mind with your mind. This is the mistake almost everyone makes. You sit down to work, your thoughts are racing, you feel scattered, you feel the urge to check your phone. So you try to use your willpower to force your brain to be quiet. You try to command your thoughts to stop. This never works. It is like trying to grab smoke with your bare hands. The more you try to suppress your thoughts, the louder they become. To control the mind, you must bypass the mind. You must use the body. Specifically, you must use the eyes. Most people think of their eyes as cameras. You believe they are passive devices that simply take pictures of the world and send them to your brain. That is biologically incorrect. Your eyes are not just connected to your brain. They are the brain. Embryologically, the retina is formed from the same tissue as the central nervous system. It is the only part of your brain that sits outside your skull. This means that your eyes have a direct, hardwired connection to your autonomic nervous system. They are the steering wheel of your state of arousal. Here is the rule you need to memorize. Mental focus follows visual focus. If your eyes are scattered, your mind will be scattered. If your eyes are still, your mind will be still. We are going to use this biological lever to manually override your state of distraction. We are going to discuss the science of oculomotor regulation, and then I will give you the specific protocols to use. Let's look at the mechanism. When you are stressed, or overwhelmed, or looking for distraction, your eyes move rapidly. They dart from object to object. We call these movements saccades. Evolutionarily, this makes sense. If you were walking through a dangerous jungle, you would want your eyes to scan constantly. You are looking for a tiger in the bushes. You are looking for a snake on the path. You are scanning for threats. When your eyes are moving this way, they send a signal to your brainstem, specifically to a cluster of neurons called the locus coeruleus. This signal says, "We are scanning. Keep the alertness high. Do not lock onto anything. Keep moving." This is exactly what happens when you scroll through social media. New image, new text, new video. Scan, scan, scan. You are mechanically training your brain to be in a state of rapid switching. Now, consider what happens when you need to do deep work. You need the opposite. You need your attention to lock onto a single stream of information for a sustained period. But if you sit down to work, and your eyes are still in scanning mode, your brain is receiving a contradictory signal. You are trying to force your mind to focus, but your eyes are telling your brain to scan. You cannot win that battle. To enter deep focus, you must first stabilize your visual field. We can look to the work of Dr. Andrew Huberman and Dr. Stephen Porges to understand how to fix this. They identified two primary modes of vision that dictate your state. The first is panoramic vision. This is when you dilate your gaze. You are not looking at a specific point. You can see the ceiling, the floor, and the walls in your periphery. Panoramic vision engages the parasympathetic nervous system. It signals safety. It tells your brain that there are no immediate threats in the environment. The second mode is convergent vision. This is when you narrow your visual aperture. You focus your eyes on a single small point. A letter on a screen. A pen on a desk. When you do this, your eyes physically rotate inward. This is called vergence. This movement sends a powerful signal to the brainstem to release neurochemicals like acetylcholine and norepinephrine. Here is the problem. Most of us try to jump straight from high-speed scanning, distraction, to deep convergent vision, work, without a transition. You need a bridge. I am going to give you two protocols to build that bridge. Protocol 1 is the optic flow reset. Use this when you feel agitated, anxious, or unable to sit still. When you sit at a desk all day, your visual field is static. The room does not move. The screen does not move. Your brain is designed to move through space. When you move forward, walking, running, or cycling, images pass by your eyes. This is called optic flow. If you are stuck in a loop of procrastination, do not just sit there and fight it. Get up, go outside, walk forward for 10 minutes. Do not look at your phone. Let the world pass by your eyes. This is not just taking a break. It is a neurological reset. You are using the movement of images across your retina to wash away the accumulated stress hormone. Protocol 2 is the gaze anchor. Use this immediately before you start a deep work session. Sit at your desk. Choose a target. It could be a specific dot on the wall. It could be a screw on your lamp. It could be the cursor on your blank screen. I want you to stare at that target for 30 seconds. Do not look away. At first, this will feel easy. After 10 seconds, it will become uncomfortable. Your eyes will want to dart to the side. You must resist that urge. Hold the gaze. As you hold that gaze, you are signaling the locus coeruleus to narrow the mental aperture. This is the target. Ignore everything else. Once you hit the 30-second mark, you will notice a shift. The background noise in your head will quiet down. The impulse to check your phone will recede. You have now mechanically primed your brain for focus. There is one final nuance to this visual strategy. It is called the cathedral effect. High ceilings and large, expansive views promote abstract, creative thinking. Low ceilings and narrow visual fields promote analytical, detailed thinking. If you are trying to brainstorm a new strategy, do not sit in a cramped cubicle. Engage your panoramic vision. But if you are trying to execute, code, write, analyze, you need to narrow the field. Lower your gaze. Put on a hood. Use a desk lamp to create a pool of light on your work. You are artificially creating a tunnel. So, here is your summary for Chapter 3. Your eyes drive your mind. If you are scattered, create optic flow. Walk forward. If you are about to work, use the gaze anchor. If you need to execute, narrow your visual field. You have now stabilized the vessel. Your body is calm. Your eyes are locked. But now we have to deal with the passenger. Even with your eyes locked, there is going to be a moment, about 5 minutes in, where you feel a wave of internal heat. I can't do this. This is not a visual problem. This is a friction problem. And most people misinterpret this feeling as failure. In the next chapter, we are going to learn why that feeling of agitation is actually the most important sign that you are doing it right. Chapter 4, Limbic Friction, Managing the Agitation Phase. I want you to visualize the scenario that has defeated you 1,000 times. You have set up your desk. You have put your phone in the other room. You have done the gaze anchor exercise we just discussed. Your eyes are locked. You are ready to work. You start typing, reading, or coding. For the first 2 or 3 minutes, it feels fine. You feel capable. But then, you hit minute 5. Suddenly, a wave of heat rises in your chest. You feel a physical agitation. Your leg starts bouncing. You feel an intense, almost magnetic pull to stand up. You feel a sudden urge to get a snack, or check the news, or clean the kitchen. Your internal monologue starts screaming at you. It says, "This is too hard. I am not in the mood right now. I have brain fog. I should wait until I feel more inspired." And so, you quit. You tab away. You tell yourself you will try again later when you feel ready. I need you to understand something fundamental. That feeling of agitation, that desire to run away, that is not a sign that something is wrong. That is a sign that your brain is functioning perfectly. You are interpreting a physiological warm-up mechanism as a failure signal, and because of that interpretation, you are quitting exactly at the moment you should be pushing. We call this phase limbic friction. It is the biological gatekeeper of deep work. And you cannot go around it. You must go through it. Before we break down the chemistry, I must give the standard disclaimer. I am not a doctor, and this is not medical advice. We are discussing the mechanics of neurotransmitters to help you navigate your own state. Here is what is happening inside your skull at minute 5. To enter a state of high focus, your brain needs to release a specific cocktail of neurochemicals. The two most important ones are noradrenaline and acetylcholine. Noradrenaline is chemically almost identical to adrenaline. Its job is to wake up the brain. It creates alertness. It creates arousal. It prepares you for effort. But here's the catch. Noradrenaline is a stress hormone. Subjectively, High levels of noradrenaline feel like anxiety. They feel like agitation. They feel like stress. You cannot have alertness without agitation. They are the same biological coin. So when you sit down to focus, your brain dumps noradrenaline into your system to wake you up. You feel that jolt. You feel that itch. Most people feel this and think, oh no, I am anxious, I am stressed, I cannot work like this, I need to calm down first. No, you do not need to calm down. You need to leverage the energy. The second chemical is acetylcholine. This is the spotlight. Acetylcholine marks the specific neurons that are firing and says, these are important. Change these connections. This is the chemical of neuroplasticity and laser focus. Here is the problem. There is a lag time. The noradrenaline hits you almost instantly, but the acetylcholine takes time to accumulate. Research suggests there's a gap of approximately 20 minutes between the start of a task and the onset of deep, sustainable flow. That 20-minute window is the limbic friction gap. During this time, you have the agitation of the adrenaline, but you do not yet have the tunnel vision of the acetylcholine. You are all gas and no steering wheel. It is uncomfortable. It is supposed to be uncomfortable. Think of a rocket launch. When a rocket sits on the pad, it is stable. When it reaches orbit, it is smooth. But to get from the pad to orbit, it has to burn a massive amount of fuel to escape gravity. If you watch the astronauts during launch, they are shaking violently. The noise is deafening. The pressure is crushing. If an astronaut felt that shaking and said, something is wrong, I should turn off the engines, they would crash and burn. The shaking is the requirement for the launch. When you sit down to work, you are the rocket. That agitation at minute 5 is the gravity of your old state fighting against the thrust of your new state. If you quit during the friction, you never reach orbit. So, how do we manage this? We cannot eliminate the friction, but we can shorten the duration, and we can dampen the emotional response. I am going to give you 2 specific tools to bridge the gap. The first tool is mechanical. It is for your body. It is called the physiological sigh. This protocol has been popularized recently by neurobiologists like Dr. Andrew Huberman, but the mechanics of it have been known in physiology for decades. It is based on a phenomenon called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. When you are in that high noradrenaline state, agitated, stressed, wanting to quit, your breathing naturally becomes shallow. You are retaining too much carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. Carbon dioxide is a stress trigger. When CO2 levels rise, your brain perceives suffocation, and it jacks up the panic signal. To focus, you need to offload that carbon dioxide quickly, and you need to signal your heart to slow down. Here are the mechanics of why this works. When you inhale, your diaphragm moves down. This creates more space in your thoracic cavity. Your heart physically gets slightly larger because it has more room. Because it is larger, blood flows more slowly. Your brain notices this slowdown and sends a signal to speed the heart up. Inhale equals acceleration. When you exhale, the diaphragm moves up. The space in your chest gets smaller. Your heart is physically compressed. Blood flows faster. Your brain notices this speed and sends a signal to the vagus nerve to slow the heart down. Exhale equals deceleration. So, the physiological sigh leverages this mechanics to crash cool your nervous system. Here is the protocol. You take a double inhale through the nose, followed by a long, extended exhale through the mouth. It looks like this. You inhale deeply through your nose. Then, at the very top of that breath, you take a second, shorter inhale to fully inflate the lungs. Then, you exhale slowly through your mouth, making a soft sighing sound until your lungs are completely empty. There is a specific reason for the double inhale. Your lungs are filled with millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli. When you are stressed, these sacs collapse, like deflated balloons. When they collapse, they cannot exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide efficiently. That second, sharp inhale pops those air sacs open. It increases the surface area of your lungs. Then, the long exhale engages the vagus nerve and offloads the accumulated carbon dioxide. So, tomorrow, when you hit minute 5 and you feel the urge to run, do not stand up. Stay in the chair. Do 3 physiological sighs. Double inhale. Long exhale. You will feel the temperature of your state drop immediately. You are manually adjusting the pressure valve of your nervous system. The second tool is cognitive. It is for your mind. It is called labeling the state. The reason you quit is not just because of the physical sensation, it is because of the story you tell yourself about the sensation. You feel the agitation, and your internal monologue says, I am lazy, I am broken, I can't do this. This narrative engages the limbic system, the emotional brain. The limbic system is reactive. It wants to escape pain. We need to disengage the limbic system and engage the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the logic center. It is the CEO of your brain. Neuroscience imaging shows that when you experience a negative emotion, the amygdala lights up. But if you simply name that emotion, if you put a label on it, the amygdala deactivates and the prefrontal cortex takes over. This is a concept called affect labeling. So, when the friction hits, I want you to speak to yourself. You can do it out loud or in your head, but you must be specific. Do not say, I am anxious. That is an identity statement. It implies that you and anxiety are the same thing. Instead, say, I am currently bridging the friction gap. Or say, this is the noradrenaline release. My system is warming up. By labeling it as a mechanism, you detach your identity from the sensation. You stop being a distracted person and you become an operator managing a system. This leads to a final cognitive strategy called the wall of awful. This concept comes from ADHD expert Brendan Mahon. Imagine that every task you are avoiding sits behind a brick wall. That wall is built out of every time you have failed in the past. It is built out of shame, guilt, and fear of disappointment. When you stare at the wall, it looks impossible to climb. But the wall is not the work. The wall is the feeling about the work. The only way to climb the wall is to lower the stakes. You need to implement the 20-minute rule. Tell yourself, I do not have to finish this project. I do not even have to do a good job. I just have to sit here and stare at this screen for 20 minutes. Why 20 minutes? Because that is the biological time it takes for the acetylcholine to kick in. If you can survive 20 minutes of bad work, or 20 minutes of just sitting there in the agitation, the chemistry will shift. The tunnel vision will start. The rocket will reach orbit. You do not need willpower for 8 hours. You only need willpower for 20 minutes. I want you to treat that first 20 minutes like a tax. You have to pay the tax to enter the flow state. There is no tax evasion in high performance. If you try to skip the payment, if you tab away to social media, you get hit with a penalty. You have to start all over again. Pay the tax. Sit in the fire. Use the double inhale. Label the friction. And wait for the shift. Because it will come. Biology is reliable. If you stay in the tension long enough, the brain will adapt. It always does. Now, you have the somatic tools. You have the cognitive tools. You know how to use your eyes, and you know how to use your breath. But there is one variable we haven't touched. You can override your biology for a short time. You can use these protocols to force focus for an hour or two. But willpower is a battery that drains. You cannot white-knuckle your way through a 10-year career. If you want to win long-term, you cannot rely on fighting your urges. You have to design a world where the urges never happen in the first place. You need to become an architect. In the next chapter, we are going to look at your environment. We are going to audit your desk, your room, and your devices. And we are going to see how invisible cues in your peripheral vision are draining your battery before you even sit down. Chapter 5. The Choice Architecture. Removing the Cognitive Tax. You believe that focus is a decision. You wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, today I am going to focus. Today I am going to be productive. And then, 4 hours later, you find yourself deep in a scroll hole, wondering what happened. You blame your willpower. You tell yourself you are weak. I am here to tell you that you are fighting the wrong war. Willpower is a finite resource. It is a biological battery that drains with every single decision you make throughout the day. If you are relying on willpower to ignore your phone or to ignore the chaos on your desk, you have already lost. The most disciplined people in the world do not have more willpower than you. They simply use less of it. They do not fight the distraction. They remove the option. This is a concept called choice architecture. The rule is simple. Willpower is a battery. Design is a wall. If you have to decide to focus, you are already paying a cognitive tax that you cannot afford. We are going to audit your environment. We are going to look at the invisible drains on your attention that are running in the background, specifically starting with the device in your pocket. We need to discuss the phone proximity effect. In 2017, researchers at the University of Texas at Austin, led by Dr. Adrian Ward, conducted a study that fundamentally changed how we understand attention. They took nearly 800 smartphone users and asked them to take a series of tests that measured cognitive capacity. These tests measured working memory and fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence is your ability to solve new problems and recognize patterns. It is the raw processing power of your brain. They divided the people into 3 groups. Group 1 was asked to leave their phones in another room. Group 2 was asked to keep their phones in their pockets or bags. Group 3 was asked to place their phones on the desk next to them, face down and on silent. I want you to guess what happened. Everyone believed that having the phone face down and silent would be fine. After all, it is not buzzing, it is not lighting up. It is just a piece of glass and metal sitting on the table. The results were shocking. The group with the phones on the desk performed significantly worse on the cognitive tests than the group with the phones in the other room. But here is the scary part. They also performed worse than the people with the phones in their pockets. The researchers called this the brain drain hypothesis. Here is the mechanism. When your phone is in your visual field, even if it is off, a part of your brain is actively working to ignore it. You are running a constant background subroutine called suppression. Your brain knows that the phone is a portal to infinite information and reward. It is a superstimulus. So, to keep your eyes on your work, your brain has to allocate a percentage of its processing power just to say, do not look at the black rectangle. That effort costs energy. It eats up your working memory. It reduces your fluid intelligence. You are effectively reducing your available cognitive power just by having the device in the room. The solution is grounded in what psychologists call the 20-second rule. This rule is based on the physics of friction. If you add just 20 seconds of effort to a bad habit, the brain will often abandon it. If your phone is on the desk, the friction is 0. You grab it. If your phone is in your bag, the friction is medium. You might still grab it. If your phone is in another room, behind a closed door, the friction is high. To check it, you have to physically stand up, walk 20 steps, and open a door. That small energetic barrier is usually enough to stop the impulsive loop. So, the rule is absolute. When you enter deep work, the phone leaves the room. This leads us to the second principle of environmental design. Context. Dependent learning. Your brain is an associative machine. It maps physical locations to mental states. This is governed largely by the hippocampus, which contains neurons called place cells. These cells help you navigate the world, but they also help you predict what you are supposed to do in a specific environment. The problem is that most people have corrupted their associations. You work in bed. You answer emails on the couch. You watch Netflix at your desk. You have created a neurological soup. When you sit in bed to answer emails, you are confusing your brain. The bed is supposed to be a trigger for sleep and intimacy. By bringing work into that space, you weaken the sleep association. This is why you have insomnia. But conversely, when you sit at your desk to watch a movie, you are weakening the work association. You need to build what I call the station. You need a specific physical location that is anchored solely to deep work. If you have a home office, great. If you live in a small apartment, this can be a specific chair at the kitchen table. It can even be a specific lamp that you only turn on when you are working. The rule is simple but strict. When you are at the station, you work. If you need to take a break, you stand up and leave the station. If you need to check social media, you stand up and leave the station. Over time, this builds a Pavlovian response. Just like Pavlov's dogs learn to salivate at the sound of a bell, your brain will learn to focus at the sight of the station. Now, we need to address the invisible environment, sound. This is auditory architecture. We often ignore sound, but your ears are always on. They are evolutionarily designed to act as an alarm system. When you are trying to do cognitive work, especially writing or reading, you are using a system in your brain called the phonological loop. This is the part of your working memory that processes language. If you are working in a coffee shop or an office with chatter, your brain is forced to process those background conversations. Even if you aren't listening, your phonological loop is getting jammed. It is trying to parse the words, just in case they are relevant. This is a massive cognitive leak. You need to build a sonic wall. For deep work, silence is best. But true silence is rare. The next best thing is auditory masking. This means using pink noise or brown noise. Unlike white noise, which is harsh and high-pitched, pink and brown noise simulate the frequencies of nature, like heavy rain or a waterfall. These frequencies mask the sharp, sudden sounds of your environment, like a car door slamming or a person talking, that trigger your startle reflex. Put on noise-canceling headphones. Play brown noise. You are effectively closing the auditory door to the world, freeing up that processing power for your work. Finally, we must address the machine itself. We have moved the phone. We have defined the space. We have masked the sound. But we still have the computer. Your laptop is a distraction machine. It is a library, a cinema, a shopping mall, and a casino, all wrapped into one screen. To reach the highest levels of focus, you need to implement the digital air gap. In cybersecurity, an air gap is a computer that is physically isolated from the internet. It cannot be hacked because it is not connected. You need to create a version of this for your mind. The ultimate strategy is to have a secondary device. Get an old laptop, wipe it clean, delete the browser, delete the email client, keep only the software you need for your craft. A word processor, a coding environment. That is it. Disconnect the Wi-Fi. When you need to do deep work, you move to the station, and you use the air-gapped device. Now look at the choice architecture you have built. You are sitting in a chair that your brain associates only with work. Your ears are protected by brown noise, masking the phonological loop. Your phone is in another room, adding 20 seconds of friction to the distraction. Your computer has no internet connection, so you cannot tab away even if you want to. You have removed the option to fail. The cost of distraction is now higher than the cost of work. To check Facebook, you would have to take off your headphones, stand up, leave the room, find your phone, and unlock it. That is too much effort. To write the sentence, you just have to type. You have tilted the floor so that gravity pulls you toward the work. This is how you win. You do not pray for willpower. You engineer the environment so that focus is the path of least resistance. You stop paying the cognitive tax. So, here is your checklist for Chapter 5. 1. The phone leaves the room, no exceptions. 2. Define the station. Never do low-value tasks in your high-value seat. 3. Seal the ears. Use brown noise to mask the environment. 4. Create a digital air gap. Separate the creation tool from the consumption tool. If you do these 4 things, you will find that the resistance we talked about in the earlier chapters begins to fade. You are no longer fighting against the current. You are swimming downstream. We have now covered the biology, the chemistry, the somatic tools, and the environment. You have the complete system. But there is one final piece of the puzzle. It is the ghost in the machine. You can have the perfect desk, the perfect breathing protocol, and the perfect neurochemistry. But if you see yourself as a broken person, if your identity is tied to the narrative of, I am scatterbrained, then you will eventually sabotage the system. You will find a way to break the architecture to align with your self-image. In the final chapter, we are going to rewire the identity. We are going to look at how to stop seeing focus as something you do and start seeing it as something you are. Chapter 6. Neural Reinforcement, Hardwiring the New Identity. I want to start this final chapter by challenging the deepest belief you hold about yourself. You likely believe that you are a person with a short attention span. You tell yourself, I am just scattered. That is how my brain is wired. I have the attention span of a goldfish. I am here to tell you that this is nonsense. You do not have a short attention span. You have a highly practiced distraction habit. There is a massive difference. If I asked you to play a video game, or watch a suspenseful movie, or scroll through TikTok for 3 hours, you could do it. You could focus perfectly. Your hardware works fine. Your machinery is intact. The problem is that for the last 10 years, you have been training your brain to be distracted. You have been practicing distraction with the intensity of an Olympic athlete. Every time you feel a twinge of boredom and you immediately switch to your phone, you are performing a repetition. You are practicing the skill of giving up. And because you have practiced it thousands of times, you have become a master at it. To fix this, we have to look at the science of neuroplasticity, specifically, a mechanism called practice-dependent plasticity. Most people think the brain stops developing in childhood. We now know that is false. Your brain is plastic until the day you die. It is constantly rewiring itself based on what you do. Here are the mechanics of it. Inside your brain, you have white matter and gray matter. The white matter is largely made of a substance called myelin. Think of your neural circuits like copper wires. Myelin is the rubber insulation that wraps around those wires. When a wire is uninsulated, the signal leaks. It is slow and weak. When a wire is well insulated, the signal is fast and strong. Every time you repeat a behavior, whether it is a tennis serve, a piano chord, or checking your phone, special cells in your brain called oligodendrocytes wrap a layer of myelin around the neural circuit used for that action. This is how a habit is formed. You are physically insulating the wire. Right now, your distraction circuit is wrapped in thick, heavy layers of myelin. It is a superhighway. The signal travels instantly. Your focus circuit, however, is a dirt road. It is uninsulated. The signal is weak. This is why focus feels so hard. You are trying to push a signal down a dirt road while the highway is right next to it. But here is the good news. Myelin goes both ways. You can build a new highway. We need to shift your mindset from a fixed mindset to a builder mindset. You are not trying to focus. You are building myelin. I want you to view your focus sessions exactly like you view a trip to the gym. When you go to the gym and lift a heavy weight, it hurts. Your muscles burn. You strain. You do not interpret that burn as failure. You do not say, "Oh no, my muscles are burning. I must be bad at lifting weights." No. You say, "This burn is the whole point. The burn is where the muscle grows." You need to apply this exact same logic to your attention. When you sit down to work and you hit that moment of agitation, that moment we called limbic friction, that is the weight. That urge to quit is the gravity. If you give in and check your phone, you just drop the weight. You failed the rep. But if you feel the urge and you acknowledge it and you choose to stay for just 5 more minutes, you just completed a rep. You just wrapped a layer of myelin around your focus circuit. This is not a metaphor. This is literal physiology. There is a specific part of your brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. This area is considered by many neuroscientists to be the seat of willpower. Studies suggest that this area of the brain can actually increase in volume when you do things that you do not want to do. When you resist a temptation, it grows. When you push through fatigue, it grows. But habitual avoidance may weaken this capacity. So, every single time you feel the pain of focus and you choose to stay, you are reinforcing the neural pathways required to be a high performer. This is why the sojourner mindset is so critical. A sojourner is someone who is on a long journey. They know they have not arrived yet. They are patient. You need to stop expecting focus to feel easy. It is not supposed to feel easy. It is supposed to feel like a workout. If you sit down tomorrow and you only manage to focus for 12 minutes before you break, do not beat yourself up. 12 minutes is better than 0. You did 12 minutes of reps. Next week, aim for 15, then 20, then 45. You are training a muscle. And just like you cannot bench press 300 pounds on your first day in the gym, you cannot do 4 hours of deep work on your first day of the new protocol. Be patient, but be relentless. This brings us to the final and most profound shift. The identity loop. Behavior shapes identity. Most people try to change their identity by using affirmations. They look in the mirror and say, "I am a focused person. I am a productive machine." But deep down, they know they are lying. Your subconscious keeps a receipt of everything you do. It knows you spent 3 hours on Instagram yesterday. It knows you procrastinated on that email. You cannot lie to your own brain. The only way to change your identity is to provide evidence. You need to build a stack of proof. Every time you leave your phone in the other room, you are casting a vote for your new identity. Every time you use the physiological sigh to calm down instead of quitting, you are casting a vote. Every time you finish a task, no matter how small, you are casting a vote. Eventually, you will reach a tipping point. You will have so much evidence that you are a focused person that your identity will shift naturally. You will not have to try to believe it. You will simply know it. You will look at a distracted person and think, "That is not me anymore. I am the type of person who does the work." Once that identity shifts, the war is over. because you will always act in accordance with who you believe you are. So, here is the summary of the neural reinforcement protocol. 1. Stop calling yourself scattered. You are just out of practice. 2. Treat every urge to quit as a rep in the gym. The pain is the point. 3. Visualize the myelin wrapping around the wire every time you resist distraction. 4. Bank the evidence. Prove to yourself, day by day, that you are becoming a master. You now have the complete blueprint. We have diagnosed the metabolic cost. We have corrected the chemical error. We have anchored the eyes. We have managed the friction. We have designed the environment, and we have rewired the identity. The system is complete. Now, we must close this journey. I want to leave you with a final thought on what this all means for your life. We have journeyed from the glucose molecules in your blood to the layout of your desk. We have gone from the microscopic receptors on your neurons to the macroscopic design of your room. I want you to take a moment to integrate what we have covered. You learned that your inability to focus is not a moral failing. It is a metabolic veto. It is your brain trying to save energy in a world that demands high-energy thinking. You learned that your addiction to distraction is not about pleasure. It is about avoidance learning. It is a mechanism designed to protect you from the pain of uncertainty. You learned that you cannot control your mind with your mind. You must use visual anchoring to lock the system into place. You learned that the agitation you feel is not anxiety. It is limbic friction. It is the necessary heat of the rocket launch. And you learned that willpower is fragile, but choice architecture is robust. By moving your phone and designing your station, you make focus the default option. You now possess the manual for your own brain. But information alone changes nothing. Understanding the mechanism of a bicycle does not mean you can ride it. You have to get on the seat. You have to pedal. So, here is your challenge. I do not want you to wait until Monday. I want you to execute this protocol tomorrow morning. Step 1. Wake up and get outside. Do not touch your phone. Get 10 minutes of optic flow. Walk forward and let the world pass by your eyes to quiet your amygdala. Step 2. Return to your home and put your phone in a different room. Close the door. Create the friction. Step 3. Sit at your station. Engage the gaze anchor. Stare at your target for 30 seconds until your vision locks. Step 4. Begin. And here is the most important part. 5 minutes in, when the friction arrives, when you feel that heat rising in your chest, when your brain begs you to stop, do not move. Do not stand up. Do not look away. Sit in the fire. Use the physiological sigh. Label the state. Tell yourself, this agitation is the price of entry. If you can stay in that chair for just 20 minutes, the heat will break, the tunnel will open, and you will find yourself in a place of quiet command that you haven't felt in years. That heat you feel is not your brain breaking. That heat is your brain changing. Welcome to the deep life.